Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Drummers Education Connection. My name is Jeremy Steinkohler. I'm here with three of my very dear friends and amazing drummers, Bart Robley from Southern California, Rick Stojak down in San Diego, and Chip Ritter in Tucson, Arizona.
Yes.
Yeah, we're so happy. We love being here every week talking about drums and drum things, drum industry, drum teaching, drumming, drum education, anything you can do with the drum. We want to talk about it, but we especially like it when we have special guests on, and today is no exception. We have a terrific person in the industry, in the drumming industry. He's a titan in the drumming industry, I would say. I knew you'd laugh when I said that too. Welcome to Rob Wallis of Hudson Music. Yeah, Rob.
Thank you. Rob, thank you so much for being part of the show today.
Yeah, thank you.
Rob, for those, if any of you have been breathing in the 20th century or last 15 years, I should say, 21st century, you know about Hudson Music. Hudson Music is the leader in the drumming industry with educational videos, educational books. They've been expanding at a rapid pace. And this all comes from Rob's previous experience in the industry, which I want to start with. I want to go back to the days in the early 80s with the Drummers Collective. So I grew up in New York City in the 70s and 80s, and the Drummers Collective was where it was happening, man. I mean, this was like the center of like learning to play the drums. And you actually owned or took over the Drummers Collective. Is that correct?
Yeah, I actually started out as a student there. I had my one, real day job at that point. I was working at Sam Ash in the drum department on 48th Street.
Yep.
And I had heard about this little underground drum school. I had no idea what it meant, Drummers Collective. It had started a few years prior and had a really prestigious, very small faculty, but, some great guys, Narda Michael Walden and Kenwood Denard, Chet DeBow, killer guys. And I was looking to study. So I went down there one day on my lunch hour and met the person at the front desk who eventually, after like knowing him for about an hour and a half and maybe two lunches, we ended up buying the collective because the then owner wanted to move back to Boston and into a family business. And we had no money. I was just, working at Sam Ash and playing gigs. So we worked out a way to finance and basically just bought the equipment from him and took over the lease. And, one day I wake up and I have a set of keys in my hand and I open a door and I'm an owner of a business in Manhattan. I was 25.
Wow. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Rob, I just have to insert this because it's quite possible that you sold me my first drum set. I didn't even know this, but I bought my first drum set at Sam Ash when I was 10 years old on 48th Street. And
what year would that have been?
1980.
Wow. It could have just been,
wow.
I was there for a couple of months in 80 and we took over the school in I think it was March of 80. And I was at Ash up until that point. That's funny.
That's really funny. Yeah. Small world stuff. So when you took over the Drummers Collective, you were 25, you were just a kid. Did you have any vision for what you wanted to grow it into or people you wanted to bring in? You're like, no, this is just a cool thing. I want to be a part of it. And
no idea. It's like with every sort of business decision I've made, I kind of just jump in. It just felt right. I kind of go by my gut usually. And I was really young. No business experience. I was just a drummer, and wanted to play drums. And I figured it would be a way to stay connected to playing the drums. And, I knew I didn't want to get heavily into going on the road. So I figured this would be a base, like it would keep me, kind of local and, meeting drummers and other musicians. I was in bands in the city. We used to rehearse at the Collective at night. It was and like you said, Jeremy, a very cool scene at the time. Like the 80s, all through the 80s, the school was it was really like a laboratory. People were literally inventing rhythms and putting rhythms on the drum set, like Latin things. There was a brilliant conguero named Frankie Malabe. He passed at a very young age, but he was one of the real backbones of the school. A brilliant guy, and there you go.
I have that book.
Me too.
Yeah, great book.
Yeah,
all that
great
stuff
book.
was developed at the Collective, and
Yeah.
and that's
Wow.
really how we started. That was the first book I ever published, and it was not by mistake, but just because Frankie was there and developing all this content, and that's how it happened.
Well, and so you ended up going really, really deep in the direction of, with DCI instructional videos, and then eventually Hudson Music, into expanding and furthering the development of percussion and drum set pedagogy. I would say, right? I mean, you've got honestly, you can be as humble as you want, but there are so many books and videos that have helped me become the drummer and teacher that I am. That
myself included. I'll second that.
That you had a hand in producing one way or another, or maybe it was your company, or maybe it was,
No, I got lucky. I was lucky.
Yeah.
I thank you. I appreciate it. It means a lot. At this point, in my life, I've always looked forward more than I've looked back. So people say, well, how many books have you produced? How many videos? I really have never counted. I can't count that high. No.
Yeah, right.
But, it's a large catalog that I'm really proud of, and mostly proud when people reach out and say, oh man, I love this thing that you did. It changed my life. It changed the way I play. The response to the Gadamans book was I don't know it's more than flattering. I mean, it was very moving, and Steve and I would talk a lot about the feedback in the beginning. He was really, really anxious, and he called yesterday. He was home for a couple of days from the James Taylor tour, and said, "Are people still liking the book? Is it still doing good? And he really wants to know what's happening." I forward him, people send videos or of them playing some exercises, and we're doing a contest right now, and Steve's going to be the ultimate judge at the end. But I've sent him a couple of the videos because they're so creative. There's people are doing really cool things. Somebody was outdoors in Rome. It looked like they were in front of the Colosseum or something, and he was playing on pots and pans, and he was playing these patterns outside.
Wow.
It was like mind blowing. It was done on an iPhone, but it was killer. So stuff like that. To answer your question, it's very flattering and really moving, and kind of is the reason that I still have a huge desire to keep pushing forward with this after all these years.
That's fantastic. So do you have a copy of the Gadamans book right there you can hold up for us?
I do. I happen to have my show and tell ready. That's the Gadamans book.
Yeah.
And tell us about how that came about.
Steve, as you know, we had put out a couple of videos in the early 80s that really kind of changed it for a lot of drummers, getting to see what he was doing, because he was in the studio constantly, literally working around the clock, 7 days a week. And so no one had a chance to see him, including me. And I was loving the music he was putting out and that he was involved in. So I stalked him, and eventually through some ups and downs, convinced to go in the studio. And, there's a text from Garibaldi. And it's, an amazing thing for me now, 40 years later, we put out this product that, was so much fun to work on. First of all, Steve was home because of the pandemic. He wasn't able to tour. And again, this was a project that kind of happened organically. He had these rubber tipped drumsticks in almost every room in his house, literally. And when he would be sitting there, he would want to keep his hands loose. And those. So he would literally, he'd wake up at 2 a.m, his wife told me, and he'd go in the kitchen for an hour and just keep his hands loose. And he Steve being Steve, it had a groove. It had to be musical. It had to make sense. And so he started writing a couple of them down, a couple of these patterns that he was, working on. And one day he called and and he said, what do you think? I don't know if I have a book here, but I'm having fun playing this stuff, and I'm starting to notate it. I said, send it along. Let's see what you got. So as soon as I saw it, I said, wow, this is really, great. And then it was another, boy, I'd say maybe 6 months of Steve working on it really daily. I mean, there were days when he would call 4 or 5 times in a day, and he'd say, okay, I'm setting up another exercise, and he'd email it, and this is all still while it's in his notebook. And he'd say, what do you think? And I'd say, great. And then he'd call back 2 hours later. Oh, you know what? Go to like the one I just sent you, go to the like 8th bar, go to the next to last 8th note. I want that 8th note to have an accent. It grooves much better with the accent, And this is how it went for 6 months. We started, getting the book laid out. He wanted it not to look like it was computer generated, because he just feels that it's very intimidating to see, like versus the handwritten notation that he grew up with.
Right.
So we actually found somebody that was a Broadway copyist, and he had just pretty much retired from doing pen and ink work. So he got his pen out and practiced a little bit. And we sent him a couple of charts to try, and they came back looking beautiful. And, Steve was involved in every decision. How many bars to the line, what line should the music start on? If it wasn't a full page, do we drop it down 1 line? Do we drop it 2 lines? I mean, it was incredible. There was a funny story. He at sort of, I'd say in a very early spring, it was maybe March, I'd say February or March it must have been. He went over to England. It was his first time kind of traveling and working, and he was going to England for 3 weeks to record a record with Clapton. And, it was very safe. It was in a bubble. He was, on a plane with very few people and very isolated, the whole experience. But one night, the phone rings. I'm watching TV with my wife. It was 11 o'clock here, which means it was, 4 in the morning in England. And so he called these, and he did another one of these, go to page 27, bar 8. I want the last 2 16th notes to have accents. No problem, Steve. I'll talk to you later. Boom, I hang up. 5 minutes later, this went on, like he called like 4 times. Finally, I said, Steve, what time is it there? He said, well, it's like 4:30 in the morning. I said, listen, dude, you got to go to sleep. I don't want Eric calling you, telling you you're showing up tired for work. But the message with that is that he's just, that's the way he works and the way he focuses on what he's doing at the time. And I'm sure it's no different. I mean, I've seen him in the studio. We've been in the studio, but I've seen him on record dates, and he gives 110% focus. It's like the rest of the world could be burning down. And if he's got a job to do, that's what he's focused on. And, there's really something to be said for it. But that's the way that project came about. And I was thrilled and feel very honored and very fortunate to have been in a position to help him put it out. And, the response has been unbelievable.
Hey, Rob, is Gatterman's going to be available on the Hudson online bookstore?
I mean, what do you guys think? The thing that Steve, he was very involved. There were certain pages, as you know, that fold out, and he wanted that because he didn't want the flow to stop between certain exercises, and he wanted to be able to put them on a music stand and flow through. One's like a 2-pager, and then there's a 1-pager. So he wanted it to all just flow, so you could open them up simultaneously. Mm-hmm. And that's the only thing that you lose with digital. So I'm not sure. I mean, I've been really fighting it. I got to talk to him about it. We kind of talked about it in the beginning and said, why don't we just put it out as a book for a while and see what happens. But if you guys think it's a good idea, I'll definitely bring it to him.
Well, I have so many students where, their collection of books, they work on my book and then all of these Hudson online. So they're just bringing an iPad to
that's great.
The collection. Yeah. So
that's great to hear, Rick. That's
definitely a convenience to it. No doubt.
Yeah. I don't see why you wouldn't. I mean, I understand Steve's reservation about the pages flowing together, although it seems to me like you might be able to do a workaround on your screen like that. But, you know, you're just making this resource available to more people. That's the bottom line to me.
I have to second that. I have to second that because I see where Steve's coming from. You want to be old school and put it on a music stand and read it. I totally understand that. But there's got to be a workaround, like Jeremy said, you know, because everybody, you know, has a tablet or, I mean, their phone, but usually a tablet or something like that. There's got to be some way to work
It
around
would probably
that.
work on a tablet, you know.
Yeah,
I mean,
most definitely.
From your experience and what you guys either see or hear, I mean, with the Hudson Digital stuff, are people doing that mainly on tablet and laptop, or are they trying to do it on a phone?
Tablet.
Yeah,
tablet or laptop. Yeah, yeah. Every once in a while I'll have a student that, you know, and they just get frustrated. They're looking at it on a phone, but usually it's a tablet or a laptop. Yeah.
You know, Rob, I think.
In a lesson too, I have. Oh, sorry, Chip. In a lesson, I have my laptop with Apple TV, and then the book is up on a television right between the two sets.
Oh, great!
Yeah, it's so awesome.
Yeah, you know? That's great. That's great to hear. I'm thrilled. I'm really thrilled.
And then you can hit the beat and then hear it, like in the Groove Essentials, and it goes right through a PA. And I'm sorry, Chip, you had something.
No, I was just going to say, Rob, since we've been anointed with this technology, there's really no downside to going digital with it. I mean, you don't lose anything, and you can only gain.
You're right. You know, you're right. I haven't gone back and kind of rethought it, you know, in a while. I've been focused on sort of the next project already. So, I'll talk to him. I'll talk to him maybe today or tomorrow. You
can tell him that we all said so, and that if he has a problem,
let him know that we said it would be cool.
Yeah,
actually,
Rob, cool with it. I got to ask you, man. So you know, he's sending you these exercises for the book, and was there any time where you're like, "Yeah, no, this one's no good, Steve"?
You took the question. I was going to ask that.
You should go work on. Go practice this some more.
Yeah,
Steve.
Go practice with.
You know, you don't have to say a lot. Like, you know, he's so intuitive. If there was something that I thought, you know, was either, you know, too difficult or, you know, wasn't sort of grooving, you know, I mean, it's Steve Gadd. I mean, what doesn't groove? You know,
exactly.
He can sing the phone book and it'll groove.
Exactly.
No, I mean, it was him constantly questioning himself, really, more than anything about, you know, he was playing the stuff over and over, and he just wanted it to really, you know, have a swing to it, you know. Right. And, you know, and he was very concerned about phrases, and he wanted people to subconsciously get used to playing in phrases and phrasings, you know, so that you transfer that to your, you know, your gig, you know, and playing music.
Right.
It's so ingrained in his DNA. But that's something that we wanted to make sure came across was the phrasing. That's why this bracket, certain of the odd, you know, the odd patterns are bracketed so that you kind of feel the phrase.
Yeah.
So
did you play through a lot of? Oh, sorry, Rick.
Oh, go ahead, Bart. Well, Rob, speaking of drummer geniuses, did you say Garibaldi just texted you?
Yeah.
Well, you know, if you want to call him and put him on speakerphone.
We'll get Dave on here. We'll get Dave on here.
You know, when we release his book, he'll want to talk about it. It's been we've been working on it for about a year, and it's really, really great content, and it's going to be different. There's some really interesting elements to it. There's going to be video and print, and it's going to be very cool. He's really excited. He's going into the studio right after he gets back from PAS to record the video.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and it's going to be an organic book. It's going to continue. It's going to be there'll be a physical, but the digital version of it he's going to be adding lessons to it as time goes on. Like every month, he's going to add to it.
That's cool.
It's called DG's Workshop, workbook.
Oh, wow. Okay.
DG's work beats, BEATZ. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Where are the videos, Rob? Where are the videos for that available? Are they available for when it comes out? Will it be available for download, or how
Yeah.
will that work?
Yes, it'll be available. Like all of our books that have audio and video,
Yeah.
the physical version, they're all housed on a website, and you can stream or download them. There's a
Okay.
code in the book. You
Yeah.
put in the code, and it lets you write in, and you go to your book and download or stream, what you want.
One of my favorite books on Hudson, is the Tommy Igoe book. I love the Groove Essentials books, the catalog, the everything. And I've got an old school. I've got the DVDs. I've had them for so long. And so I was just wondering if you guys were going to do that same thing with the
We've done it. Yeah, it's all online now. When you buy
Yeah.
the book now, there's no disc or anything. There's a card actually in the back of the book that tells you where to go to get the media.
That's great. No, that's
So,
fantastic.
Rob, in the last couple of years, you guys have branched out a little bit to start doing some biographies. Here's the Jeff Porcaro biography. You've got one from Liberty DeVito, which is also really great. And you've got one coming out. Thanks, Rick. From Stuart Copeland. It's about coming out, right?
Yeah. So there's two different things. Stewart's is not a biography, and I'll talk about that. But yeah, the biographies were just a great something I'd never done. I never put out a kind of real book that had no musical notation. So
mine has no musical notation.
Yeah,
but I know it's not the same. Go ahead. That's right.
So I was called one day a drummer who was kind of a secret, under the radar, but unbelievably great and important guy named Bobby Morris. He was a drummer in Vegas in the 50s. He started playing with Louis Prima, and called, Steve Smith suggested. Steve became friends with Bobby and Daniel Glass, and they suggested he reach out to me to possibly publish it. And I said, Bobby, send me the manuscript. I'd love to read it. I've never done one of these kind of books before, but I'll check it out. And I read it and I couldn't put it down. I finished it in like a day, and I was up till 3 a.m. reading for 2 days, and it blew me away. His life story coming in from Europe when he was 10, growing up in New York. He studied at Henry Adler's on 46th Street. He used to take the lesson right after Freddie Gruber, and he became friends with Freddie. It was just it was just meant to be. So I said, look, Bobby, I'd love to put this out. The world needs to hear your story. He became the biggest booking agent in Vegas while he was playing. And, he had a building with agents. At one point, he had one of his acts on 70 billboards in Las Vegas at the same time. I mean, mind-boggling. He then became a musical director by, I don't want to give away too much of the book, but he worked with the biggest people, from Elvis to Sinatra, and he would kind of the mob. I mean, there's stories about presidents. It's an incredible life story. And I said, Bobby, I'd love to put it out, but I've never done it. But if you're into giving it a shot, I'll give it a shot. I didn't even know who could print a hardcover book. Our printer that does the 9x12 music books doesn't do that hardcover. It's a specific type of printing. Right. So I found a printer and we did it, and it was really fun. We had 2 book signings in Vegas. Steve Smith was playing with Journey at the time during one of them. So Steve came and hung out with us and was at the signing. And then I was approached to put out a Buddy Rich biography. This one, written by a European author and drummer. And so that was sort of the second one that kind of fell in my lap, and we worked on that, put that out. And then Liberty DeVito, I guess, saw those and said, hey, I'm working on a book. So we put out Libs, and then we did an audio version. It's on Audible, which was really cool. We did it at Richie Cannata's studio, and Richie being the sax player, the original sax player with Billy Joel. So they had all kinds of extra stories that they added in to the book. Cool. And that was months of recording, because you have to get every syllable right. And with Audible, they can't be like, if there's a scratching, of a mic on your shirt, they reject it. So it's a really tedious process, but we did that. And then Robin Flans was writing a book on Jeff Porcaro, and she needed a home for it. So suddenly I had 4, biographies. And I think they're really interesting to work on. For me, it was a real different thing. And I've loved them.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And a lot of this is on the online store too.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, this version, we did a soft cover version of Jeff's book. This is, if you can see the flag, this is the Italian version.
Oh,
nice.
Wow.
This one was translated and released in Italy.
Cool.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So it's been fun. I've been so blessed and feel so, honored and really lucky that I've kind of made up this career. I wanted to be a drummer. I still play, and I've been playing more the last couple of years than ever. But I've had this thing happen and kind of made it up as I went along, really.
Yeah, Rob, this wasn't a goal for you, was it? Or did it sounds like it just sort of like this just is what you do and what happened is
it's been 100% organic. There was no class that I took. There was no textbook I read. I fell into every hole possible, some small, some really big.
Yeah.
And, just tried to, really always just put one foot forward, trying to get closer to a goal. I always kind of had a goal in mind for something, whether it was getting a project done by X date or thinking about what was needed in the market, or going to digital. That was a big big decision and took a lot of work. And that was I started that kind of 2 years before COVID hit. So thank God we had done that, because a lot of those resources were available for people when they were stuck home all over the world.
Right.
And so it's been a real mix of don't take no for an answer. Failure is not an option.
Yep.
These are things that went, I kind of lived through for the last 40 years, and, mixed in hopefully some good karma and some good luck. And it's been great it's been fun.
I think that's one of the things that, I guess this is more of a statement than a question, but we all of us are drummers, and all of us are drum educators and teachers, and we want to pass this stuff along. And it's really more than anything because we love it. And, there's 5 of us here. We all come from different areas of the United States. We all come from different walks of life and came up differently, different generations. But we all fell in love with one simple thing, and that is the art of playing the drums. And we all had that moment where, like, that's what I have to do. That's what I want to do. I remember when mine was. And I think just that, having that passion, and Rob, I really like what you said there. Again, this is a statement, not a question, that you put some good karma out there somewhere along the way. Somewhere you've touched, in your case, tens of thousands of people's lives through these books, and you've offered people a chance to tell their story. Liberty DeVito and the like, to tell their story. And then people like Steve Gadd Steve Gadd, everything he does, like you said, it grooves. Here's some of his exercises. This is remarkable stuff. And so thank you. Thank you. And we have, all birds of a feather. We've all landed here today, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's really cool. You've done great work. Work.
Thank you.
I like
appreciate
that. Chip, who is it that made this comment?
James B. Harrison.
James Harrison says Rob made famous drummers accessible to learn from, no matter where you lived, and that's certainly true. And in addition to that, Hudson has been expanding its digital library pretty rapidly over the last couple of years, and not only has he made famous drummers accessible, but he's made other non-famous drummers accessible. Like there's people from all over the place who are submitting books and getting them published on Hudson because they're good and there's something meaningful and important to offer, even if it doesn't come from a household name.
Absolutely.
And I have a friend, David Dienel, who's got a book with you guys just published. There's just so much great content out there now, and you guys are like a hub for finding it.
That was the whole impetus really for starting digital. When you have to inventory books and print and ship around the world and warehouse in Europe and all this, it's a very involved and expensive business. Digital is so beautiful because once you create it, it's there kind of forever. It's international. There's no shipping. There's no inventorying. It's a really, you can keep the costs down because you're not, incurring all these print costs and shipping costs and warehousing costs and all that.
Right.
So, we've made a real effort to keep the price down, something that we can keep the lights on and also make sure the artists are getting compensated, for their work. And if it's good work, we try to put it out. Right now we're so backlogged. The whole publishing world has gotten very it's really shrunk.
Yeah.
Alfred was a big publisher of drum books for many, going back to the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
They were taken over by a hedge fund. The family is no longer involved, unfortunately. And I say that because I love family businesses. And the hedge funds, they owned other entities. So they focused their output and, releases and their business in other areas, like in school, they're very big in school market. They have software for schools and whole programs for schools. So the drummer, our little corner of what we all do, and I say that collectively, our little corner of the world isn't really being serviced by anyone the way it was, I should say, going back 10, 15 years. Hal Leonard was putting out a lot of drum books. Alfred, then there were smaller drum publishers, and a lot of them have kind of either changed focus, or so we're kind of in a sense the last man standing.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to try to accept as much of the quality work out there. I mean, every day we're getting submissions from all over the world. And right now we're like, backed up for a couple months of just, I don't want to just take on product for the sake of taking it on.
Right.
I want to be able to promote it. And, we've talked about this, Jeremy, on your stuff. I have to feel there's got to be some kind of plan to get it at least initially launched rather than just kind of throw it up into a website. We have over 1,000 quote products right now.
Oh my gosh.
Between videos, books, Drum Guru lesson packs, it's DVDs, online stuff, physical stuff. There's over 1,000. So
man,
Wow.
it's a lot, and it's very, very difficult to make it easily accessible. It looks like Amazon is amazing at housing. I don't know how many millions of SKUs they have, items, but it's it's not so easy.
Well, but, one thing I think is important to mention, Rob, is it's not just that you guys are putting out, like you said, you're not just putting out content just for the sake of putting out content. You curate it, you select it, and for me, even back to the days of the DCI videos, like I just knew anytime I saw, and I mean this sincerely, anytime I saw the DCI logo on a book or a video or the Hudson music, my interest is piqued because I know it's going to be good.
right.
It may not be exactly what I want or what I'm looking for, but it's definitely going to be worth my time to check out. So
I'll agree with
kudos
that.
to you for continuing to do that and continue to grow even after all this time and put out new and great content all the time, man. It's just fabulous.
Rob, with that many submissions coming in all the time, and you're that backlogged on submissions, what makes you say yes to a book? What makes you go, yeah? I mean, granted, Steve Gadd or David Garibaldi, I get that, but you get a book from Joe Drummer over here. What makes you go, wow, this is really good, I want to put it out?
It needs to be something that has its own spin on whatever the subject is. In other words, we don't need another stick control book, done in the same exact style as stick control, that just pulling one, example. It needs to say something fresh, and whether it's the way it's presented or it's combined, 4 different books into this really cool, book. Listen, there's for the most part, it's quarter note, eighth note. We're not talking. We're not talking about,
right? Yeah.
It's a very small alphabet we deal with, right? So it's got to have its own spin, and the words have to be different than someone else's words, basically. And if it's done well with integrity, sometimes we get things that are so obscure, and they're great works. They're more like intellectual, scholarly type works, and we're not really a good home for that. We're really catering, I think, to more of the guys that are hands-on players, whether they're full-time guys or they're touring or they're weekend warriors, or they play in their basement for fun as much as they can get to it, which is all great. That's who I think we're trying to reach, are those guys that are going to have sticks in their hands a couple of times a week, and so it has to speak to them. That's kind of the first level of filter, so to speak.
Right.
And then, if there's, a creative, ideas behind it, it kind of all goes into the blender, and, we try to, we really do try to evaluate as much as possible. I don't like saying no to somebody anyway. So I want to at least know that I looked at the stuff, and almost in every case, when we get a submission, I spend a little bit of time with it. So I don't just kind of pass it off or look at the table of contents or the cover and say, oh yeah, that's good, that's no good. Right. I try to spend a little bit of time with it to see what it has to say.
And do you have a team of people like with Joe? Is Joe involved with this part of the process?
Joe is it's mainly in terms of content and editorial sort of side of things. It's mainly Joe and I. Yeah.
We're talking about Joe Bergamini, for those of you who don't know.
Yeah.
Joe Bergamini, who's been a guest on the deck before, and is also a Sabian Education Network guy, and he's a partner. I don't know exactly his exact title with Hudson, but
his main title is he's my consigliere.
Assistant to the manager. Yeah.
We call him Don Bergamini.
Yeah, right.
I just watched twice the last 2 nights. It's ridiculous, but I just watched for probably the 80th time, Godfather 1. So, the consiglieres are very close to me right now.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, man.
I love it.
That's
Rob, would you have
fantastic.
any advice for new drum method book authors, in addition to what you just said about the content?
I think the best thing anyone writing any book can do for drummers is road test it. So if you're a teacher, work with it with your students, and you're going to learn a lot by letting them test drive, a couple pages or a chapter, whatever. And people should take their time with it, because once you release it, it sort of lives forever, and you want to absolutely put your best foot forward. Especially if it's, your first book, coming out of the gate. And like Jeremy was saying, if you're not, Steve Gadd or David Garibaldi or Steve Smith, you really need to grab people's attention early on, and if the book can get some momentum in the beginning, it really is a good thing, because then it can kind of propel itself. But if it just sort of thrown out to the sea, it can just kind of float around and meander, and that's not a good thing. And that's what I try to avoid when we take something on, because I know how much work people put into the writing and the creation of it. So I don't want to ever feel like somebody's saying, wow, you didn't really give my book a chance, and I'm sure there are people that feel that way because we can't promote 1,000 products, kind of all the same, but
Right.
I have lists, and I really try to make sure we hit stuff as much as possible.
We got a comment from someone who's watching. Is it Joe Bergamini or something like that?
He says, the consigliere.
Yeah, exactly. He says Rob is the man, and I'm the man, Junior.
I don't know. I've never noticed. Does Joe have like a little pinky ring, and he goes like this?
I don't know about the pinky ring, but sometimes Joe is like, I think there's 3 of them. I think he actually has a twin because he does so much work simultaneously. I don't know how he gets it all done, and plays gigs all over the country, teaches like crazy, is an author, is a father and wife, has a wife and family and beautiful family and takes care of a lot. And so I think there's more than one.
Bart, Joe just said I have one, and Uncle Vinny too.
We all have an Uncle Vinny.
Yeah, right.
I'm in Jersey. Come on, we're both in Jersey.
Exactly. I was going to say.
I thought you were talking about Vinny Colaiuta.
I knew that one was coming.
We should get Vinny to write about him. We should get a Vinny biography in the works. That would be
right.
I believe I've tried. He's. I love Vinny. We've been friends for many years, and he's just he does his own thing. He really wants to stay under the radar in a sense, and let his music speak. And so he doesn't do a lot of interviews. He's not out there, as you guys know, for years and years. He keeps as low a profile as he can, making as high a profile music as he does.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. You don't see him do a lot of interviews or anything.
That's something that I was thinking about when we were leading up to this interview, and something that Joe has mentioned to me in the past, or I've seen maybe he's mentioned on Facebook, about the opportunities that this has afforded you and Joe for meeting some of your heroes. And Neil Peart, Steve Smith, Dave Garibaldi, Mike Clark. The list is endless. I mean, you guys have been hanging out, Stuart Copeland, with the biggest names that are still alive. And you get to not only hang out with them, you get to work on these creative projects with them. And just what an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, it's again, I pinch myself because it's, I was a kid playing drums in a little, my parents' basement when I was 10. You know what I mean? That's, Bart, that, you talked about the light bulb went off for you. How old were you when you got bit by the bug?
I was 5 years old. My mom always had Elvis playing, and she took me to see Elvis play, and at the Denver Coliseum. And when he came out on stage, it was like a bomb went off, and I was just like, it was electric. And shortly after that, the Aloha from Hawaii TV special was on, and there was a camera right behind Ronnie Tutt, just right behind him. And he had his long hair and his beard. And I remember watching the hi-hat go up and down. And I thought to myself, is he doing that, or is that automatic? What is that? And I was just smitten with the thing. I was like, how does that work? And so I spent the next 50 years trying to figure out how to work the darn hi-hat. I fell in love with the drums when I was 5 years old. And I still, when I talk about it, it's like, I'm right back there. I just, I'm right in the game, and I'm right back there. And I admire anybody that can do it and play. And I'm in love with it. It's what makes my heart beat. And I think we're all that way. Again, this is a statement more than a question. I think, we're talking about, okay, Joe Bergamini and yourself, Don Famularo, we've mentioned Vinny Colaiuta, all these great people. Somewhere in their life, they were the 5-year-old kid in the basement banging on the drum set too. We're all there.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well said, Bart.
I say to people, especially friends and people I meet that are, not musicians and not in our world, that what we do, all of us collectively, it's really a lifestyle. It's not like I've never felt like, well, I got to be at work at 9 and I'm going to be done by 5. It's like, I'm going to be at work at 8 and I'm going to be done at, 11 in the, at night, because I used to take a break years ago when my kids were little so that we could have dinner. And I tried to, I started working home a long time ago before it was so fashionable, and way before Zoom. But I would then gear up, put them to bed, hang and everything, and then go to bed and make calls, because for California it was 9 o'clock. In New York obviously was 6 o'clock at night out there, so there was still time to talk to people. So there was I used to call it the night shift,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or if we were on a shoot on location somewhere in the studio, wherever in the country we were, you work literally 15, 20-hour days, and we never thought twice about it. It was never like, oh, I'm tired, or I can't believe we have to do this again tomorrow. It becomes, and I'm sure for you it's the same. It's part of your life, and it's the way you kind of get through your days and weeks and months, your schedule. It's built around playing, teaching, practicing, hanging out with musicians. And so I try to say that to people, and they kind of look at me a little strange, like, oh, I have a day job. I deliver bread. I have a bread route, and I'm done at 5 o'clock every day. And, it's cool. And by no means that's the backbone of this country are those 9 to 5, 9, whatever workers, God bless them. But what we do is a different thing. That the point I'm trying to make is it's just a different mindset than something like that, And
it really is, Rob. It's definitely a different mindset, My wife and I, we just moved into this house, and this year when the pandemic kind of started releasing its grips a little bit, the band that I work with, we went back to work, and we tour a lot. We just moved into this house, and the studio that I'm in right now built a studio this year. So we moved into the house, built the studio. I've been on the road, full roster of students. And my neighbor, new friend of mine next door, is like, how do you do all that? How do you get everything done? How do you not let things fall through the cracks? And again, it comes back to that, what you said, we're I don't know, I guess we're cut from a different cloth. We just love doing it. And to me, it doesn't bother me to, give a drum lesson and be on the road and then work on my studio. I just love it. I'm gainfully unemployed, I'm very
No, you deliver the bread, man.
Deliver the bread.
I deliver the bread. I try to deliver the bread.
And you waste no time. Like when you're on the road, you're in your hotel room, you're posting videos of you practicing rudiments and snare drum books.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's, like, well, Stanton Moore, that's one of his big things. He talks about, first thing he does when he get in a hotel room, he finds the ironing board and breaks out some brushes, and goes to work on doing brushes on the ironing board. And I'm like, that's awesome. Love that stuff. Love it.
And coming back to what Jeremy was saying, getting to work with, all these remarkable, musicians, the common thread through all of it is all of them work really, really hard, and they don't stop until the work is done. And whatever that means, it could mean, working late into the night. It could mean working for a week straight without, coming up for air. And it's really with everyone, and, it's, as we all know, it's a, going on the road. It's a very consuming thing when you're traveling from gig to gig, town to town, if you're flying or driving, whatever it is, it's hard to see what's happening in the world. You kind of get this tunnel vision, and David Garibaldi or Steve Smith. I mean, these guys, the amount of work and effort that they put into what they do, for me, it's really inspiring. And I feel really lucky that I saw some of these guys at work when I was so young, because it really helped carve a work ethic
Right.
that I was not experienced in. My family wasn't in music. My dad owned an old school 5 and 10 in a very small little town in upstate New York. And it was just a different thing, and so seeing these guys was so powerful, and it's still so and inspiring, still. I mean, when I see somebody like Gad calling me at 4 a.m. because he wants to make sure there's an eighth note with an accent, it's like, how can I not get up and work twice as hard the next morning,
Right.
Yes.
So,
Rob, are you getting any time to drum yourself?
Yeah, I've been playing lately, more than I have in a long time. I'm in it was meant as a one night fun kind of one-off gig, playing Allman Brothers music.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's what baby. Now you're talking my language.
Yeah.
Now
I
you're
grew up as
talking
an
my
Allman
language.
Brothers fan. I remember the Live at Fillmore record, when I was a kid. And I had a little phonograph, and I propped it up on books so I could listen, because there was no such thing as, I didn't have headphones, so I had to listen to the music and play. But it was meant as a one-off, and it's like 4 years now. We're playing theaters all over the Northeast now, and it's really been fun. It's a really strong band, and everyone gets along great. Really talented, much younger. Bunch of the guys are younger than me, and have hair all the way down to their butts. And but it's really been fun.
What's the name of the band?
It's called Soulshine and Allman Brothers Experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're on Facebook, and there's clips, and it's 2 drums, 2 guitar players, the exact instrumentation. We drag around a Hammond and a Leslie.
Dude, that's what we do. We have a Walt Thompson. He carries around a Hammond and a Leslie everywhere we go.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite sounding instrument of anything. Is a great Hammond player.
Yeah.
These guys are younger.
I'm sorry. I was going to say Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say they're younger than you, but they have to keep up with you.
No, it's been a really fun. It's another one of these things. I had no idea that this. If 4 years ago, if you said, "Oh, you're going to be playing like in theaters all over the Northeast," in a couple of years with a band, I'd say, "What are you talking about?" But it's been good, and I'm really glad to, kind of really get back into playing at a high level. I mean, here we are, people are spending good money on tickets, so you got to deliver a show, and it's been a total blast.
That's awesome. I had a question back to something you said a minute ago, Rob. You mentioned something that's very near and dear to my heart, and that's having a work ethic. Do you feel that that young drummers, young authors have the work ethic nowadays? Are you seeing that?
I am. I mean, I think I don't have as much interaction with people, as I did when we had Drummers Collective.
Mm-hmm.
First, we ran DCI music video out of the same space as Drummers Collective. I had my office, and a lot of the office staff. It was a small staff, but a couple of people sort of, the receptionist who answered the phones and took messages also did shipping.
Yeah.
And we'd stack up, stacks of videos in those days in the lobby. And the UPS guy would come, but so I don't day to day interact with people kind of mano a mano like I used to. But the quality of what I see from guys that reach out to us, some of it is really, really strong, really well done. The books come in, just about finished. We'll do a quick text edit on them. Their files are organized. I mean, I know the work that's involved to get it to that point, and it's there. If it's not there, we kind of say, you're not ready. Go back and put it back in the oven for a couple more hours and bake that thing.
Yeah, right.
But I do see a lot of younger guys, working really hard. Listen, we all know this business is not a get rich quick scheme.
It's not really get rich ever, mostly.
Right. Yeah.
Unless you hit it real lucky, like, one of these, 20 bands that last for 20 years and,
right.
Which we all know you can count on like 2 hands and 2 feet. Right.
Right.
So you got to work and especially, if you're getting a little older and having families and, have a house or paying rent or, and whatever, you got to work really hard on multiple fronts, I think, to make a living, playing, teaching, authoring, doing master classes, getting involved in local education outlets. I think you have to do all that stuff, and it all takes time. And so you have to be organized. You have to have the energy. You got to have the desire, like we've been talking about. Kind of the theme of this whole session, I guess, is really, effort and focus and everything like that. And you guys are living proof of it.
Well,
Hey, Rob, I have a question. How many book sales is considered a success? I know it's a broad question.
Great question.
It's a good question. It's a moving target because what was considered a success, 10, 15 years ago, it's very different now.
Right.
The numbers are probably 1 digit removed. So, if you sold 10,000, 15 years ago, now, it could be 1,500, could be considered a good book in the first, year or so. 2,000, somewhere in that ballpark. You do 5,000, it's an absolute, home run. And these days, there aren't many books that do that. Whereas, a ways back before the internet and, when people had to go into the store and buy a physical copy, 5,000 books was very attainable. If it was a well done book.
Oh, there also weren't nearly as many books available, so you had a limited number to choose from. And there was the Stick Control, and there was the Funky Primer and Syncopation. These were like the big titles that everybody bought and used and taught out of and learned out of. And now, there's just so much content, which is great, but it means it's harder to rise above the fray and make your book have an impact. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's a different business. And a mentor of mine that I learned a lot from way back when, Sandy Feldstein, who was the vice president at Alfred Music for years, and then became president of Columbia Pictures and Warner Brothers, and then he bought our company, DCI. He used to say it's a business of nickels and dimes, and if you can trim a penny and a half off the paper cost for printing a book, that was a big deal.
Right.
And, that kind of really made an impression, when I was working with Sandy, 20 years ago. It's easy for us all to get lost and thinking about what we do in our little corner of the world. But in the scheme of business, and, what's out there, in terms of like, how many boxes of Cheerios get sold every day, as opposed to how many drum books get sold every day.
Right. It's a good point.
It's easy to lose track. And I think sometimes people coming into publishing for the first time have expectations that they're going to sell thousands of books. And it's just not the case. And part of my job, I think, in the beginning, when we're approached, like we've been talking about, if somebody sends in a book for possible distribution, is making them aware of the realities of the numbers being very, very small. You think, oh, there's thousands of drummers, and Modern Drummer or Drumhead magazine sends out 50,000 copies, whatever the numbers are. I don't know what the numbers are anymore these days, but it's just not the case, in terms of sales. It's like record sales. I mean, 20 years ago, what a gold record would do, they had to change the numbers to make it make sense, right?
Right.
So,
What's on a print run, we talk digital and printing here. So two questions really. Are the numbers you're talking about in a successful book sale, is that digital and printing? And then the second part to that question is, what is a print run? If you did a book for somebody, how many are you going to physically print?
It really depends on the author, the content,
Correct. Yeah.
Like what we would do for, the GAD book is going to be different than what we do for, Joe Drummer's book.
Right.
Right. I'm realizing my laptop, I just got to run out here and grab my power cord. I'm going to run out of gas in a second. So can you guys
go grab it?
Sure. A second, and I'll be right back.
Cool.
Hang on, guys. I got to call it. It's Ringo.
Is it Ringo? Yeah, I knew that was coming. I want to say this while he's off grabbing his charger. I think one of the things that is so heartwarming to me about hearing him talk about this, and we're talking about Joe the drummer, and then people like Steve Gadd and David Garibaldi and all the household names, if you will, for in the drumming world. Doesn't matter if you're Joe the drummer or you're David Garibaldi. You want to be involved in education and putting your stuff out there and helping other people play the drums. And I think that's what this is all about.
Well, one of the things I've been wanting that you're talking about the theme of today's sort of conversation, Rob, and I think one piece of it to me that's underscores everything is passion. Like we all do this because it's what we love, and whether you're starting out publishing your first book or getting your first gig at the local coffee shop, or you're Steve Smith going on tour again and writing your 5th book and creating your 10th video, or Steve Gadd with his new book. Like we all do this because it's something we love, and you can't go into it with the wrong expectations about making money or being successful or getting famous or getting the endorsements. We talk about this on our show a lot. And what I feel like what you've done, Rob, you followed this because it was your passion. You were a player when you first took that lesson. Then you're like, oh yeah, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm going to buy the Drummers Collective. I mean, and then you don't really know what you're doing, but I'm going to make some videos. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm going to create a publishing business. I don't really know what I'm doing, but we're going to move to digital. And I don't really know what I'm doing, but we're going to put us some biographies. I mean, that's kind of how it's been for you, right? But
totally.
But the common thread through all of it is because you're doing what you love, and you're sharing that love with us crazy people in this world, the 1% that Remo says that are the drummers, or maybe it's more now, but who we engage in this thing to connect with other people and to connect with ourselves and to put this music out there into the world and help share that passion and that love to the next generation. And so, you've been just a shining example of doing that and enabling other people to do that with all your life's work. So thank you for everything you've done for the drumming community as a whole. Thank you for coming on our show. Thank you for believing in me and taking my book on. That was a big chance for you. And yeah, man, just love everything that you've done. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, dudes.
I could just say thank you, to that. It's, I feel really blessed and lucky. I've always said to my kids, find something that, you're passionate about, because getting out of bed every day, there's a lot of days, in a lifetime that you've got to push yourself. Some days you're going to not feel well. You're going to be tired. You're going to be in a bad mood. You didn't sleep well. You had a fight with your girlfriend the night before. Whatever it is, you've got to have something that gets you out of bed and puts a kick in your step, that the next morning. And I was, I've been really lucky. I just don't know what else to say, that I found that at a young age. Like Bart said, for me, it was around, 10 that I got the bug for better or worse.
Right.
Just love drumming, you know, and the fact that I'm still at my age able to play, it's like it never went away, you know. It's just,
Right. That's beautiful.
I had it deferred because I got so involved in business, I couldn't play kind of as much as I would have liked to over different periods of time. Or I coached Little League for 10 years. So
Oh, me too. We'll talk about
boys,
that. We got to talk about that.
I kind of had to hang up the sticks for a while because it was very time consuming to work and coach, but that was all great stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think, Jeremy, you're absolutely right. You know, it has to be driven by passion, and you have to get into all of this stuff that we talked about today because of your passion. That's got to be number one. Otherwise, you're going to just, you know, get fried and burn out with kind of not achieving maybe as quickly as you'd like what you want to get to. So you have to have the passion. Don't take no for an answer. And you know, failure is not an option. And if you believe those two things in your heart, you're going to be fine.
Beautiful.
Right on.
Rob, thank you so much for coming on our show today. We're honored to have you. It's really been great. We'll have you
Rob,
back
thank you.
in the future when you have some new stuff coming out you want to talk about. You're welcome anytime.
Thanks, guys. Thank each of you for all your support, because without you guys and the other guys like you out there, you know, we would be, you know, shining lights, but it would be in the dark out there. So.
Well, you know, I think that, again, it's all about that passion, and just, man, thank you so much for everything that you've done for the music business and for the drumming community. And it's outstanding. Thank you for being on the show today. We really appreciate it, Rob.
All right.
We appreciate it, Rob. Thank you so much. The drumming community is so lucky to have you.
Yeah.
Right on.
Please. It's all good. The pleasure is all mine. The pleasure is all mine.
All right. Fist pumps. Yeah.
Hey, yeah. Virtual fist pump.
All right.
All right. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye, everybody.
See you guys. Thanks for watching. We really appreciate it.